Gene Tierney once shocked Hollywood when she revealed the truth about 9 Golden Age stars who, behind all their beauty and charm, were actually cruel at heart. But before those confessions ever came to light, her own story began in a very different world, one of privilege, curiosity, and quiet dreams that would later turn into both fame and heartbreak. Jean Eliza Tierney was born on November 19, 1920. In Brooklyn, New York. Her family lived comfortably, surrounded by art, culture, and the kind of security most people only wished for. She was the daughter of Howard Sherwood Tierney, a successful insurance broker, and Belle Lavina Taylor Tierney, a warm but strict mother who believed in manners, education, and the idea that a young lady should always carry herself with grace from an early age. Jean stood out. Neighbors remembered her as a polite and curious child, with a deep voice that carried confidence and eyes that sparkled with imagination. Her beauty, even then, was remarkable. Those sharp cheekbones and vivid green eyes that seemed to look right through you. But more than beauty, she had something special, presence. When she entered a room, people noticed. Her parents made sure she had the best education. Jean attended finishing schools, where she learned French, etiquette, and all the little refinements expected of young women from well-off families. She was sent abroad to Switzerland, where she studied languages and literature. Europe opened her eyes to art, theater, and culture. She walked through museums in Paris, listened to operas, and absorbed everything like a sponge. Those experiences quietly shaped the grace that would one day mesmerize movie audiences. After returning to America, Jean wasn't immediately dreaming of being a movie star. She thought she might become a writer, maybe even a poet, but fate had other plans. In the late 1930s, she visited Warner Brothers Studios during a tour, just a casual stop, something fun to do while in California, but that short visit changed her entire life. A film producer noticed her from across the lot and was struck by her striking beauty. "Who is that young woman?" he asked someone nearby. Within days, Hollywood began whispering her name. At first, Jean wasn't sure she wanted to join the movie business. Her father, protective and traditional, thought acting wasn't a respectable career for a girl from their background, but Jean had an adventurous heart. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how much she loved performing. The idea of becoming someone else, telling a story, and expressing emotions through a camera lens fascinated her. So she decided to give it a chance. Her determination showed from the very beginning. Jean started with stage acting, learning her craft the hard way. Live audiences, long rehearsals, and the discipline that only theater can teach. She wasn't handed success, she worked for it. Her natural poise and quiet power on stage caught people's attention. Soon, 20th Century Fox offered her a contract. That moment marked the true beginning of her Hollywood journey. Under the lights of the Fox studio, Jean Tierney's face became one of the most photographed in America. But what set her apart wasn't just beauty, it was the way she moved, the way she spoke, the way she could express sadness or love with just her eyes. She wasn't like other actresses who played the same role over and over. Jean had range. She could be the angelic heroine, the tragic soul, or the dangerous woman who hid her pain behind a smile. Her big breakthrough came with the 1944 film Laura, directed by Otto Preminger. In Laura, she played a mysterious woman named Laura Hunt. Elegant, calm, and unforgettable. The movie's haunting theme song and moody atmosphere made it a hit, but it was Jean's performance that truly defined it. Audiences were captivated. Critics wrote that she didn't just play Laura Hunt, she was Laura Hunt. Her mix of innocence and sadness gave the film its heart. Even today, Laura is considered one of the best film noir classics ever made, and Jean's role is remembered as one of the greatest in movie history. After Laura, Hollywood couldn't get enough of her. The studio promoted her as the new face of elegance and mystery, but Jean didn't want to be trapped in one kind of part. She searched for roles that would challenge her, that would let her show what she could truly do as an actress. In 1945, she starred in Leave Her to Heaven, playing Ellen Barrett Harland, a beautiful woman destroyed by jealousy. This was a complete shift from her earlier roles. Ellen was not gentle or sweet, she was dark, obsessive, and dangerous. Jean gave one of the most chilling performances of the decade, filled with quiet fury and pain. Audiences were shocked. They couldn't believe that this same woman, who played the kind Laura Hunt, could also play someone so cold and ruthless. Her performance earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. People finally saw what Jean had always known. She wasn't just another pretty face. She was an actress with real depth and courage over the next few years. She appeared in a string of successful films: Heaven Can Wait 1943, The Razor's Edge 1946, and The Ghost and Mrs. Muir 1947. Each movie showed a different side of her humor, vulnerability, mystery, and heartbreak. Audiences loved her ability to make every character feel real. When Jean Tierney cried on screen, you believed it. But behind all that success, her personal life was filled with pain that the cameras could never show. Jean's marriage to fashion designer Oleg Cassini in 1941 seemed like a fairy tale romance. He was handsome, sophisticated, and already famous in the fashion world. Their wedding photos were everywhere, Hollywood's new golden couple. But life wasn't always kind to them. While Oleg designed glamorous gowns for movie stars, Jean was trying to balance fame, family, and pressure. Their first child, Daria Cassini, was born in 1943, but tragedy struck when Daria was born with serious disabilities caused by congenital rubella syndrome. Jean had caught rubella, or German measles, during her pregnancy after a fan, who had escaped quarantine just to meet her, hugged her at a public event. The consequences were devastating. Jean blamed herself even though it wasn't her fault. Daria needed lifelong care, and Jean's heart never fully healed from that pain. That heartbreak led to darker times. While her movies were winning awards, Jean was quietly battling depression. In an era when mental health was almost never discussed, she faced her struggles alone. She later said that fame felt like a shining cage. She was admired by millions but often felt completely alone inside. The combination of personal loss, pressure, and long working hours began to take a toll. Jean's performances grew deeper, more emotional. You could sense her pain behind every smile. She once said, "I used to think acting was pretending. Now I think it's remembering." That line captured the truth of her art. She drew from her own life, from her own heartbreak, and that made her unforgettable. By the late 1940s, Jean Tierney's name was shining across Hollywood. Every major studio wanted her. Every magazine wanted her face on the cover. She had the kind of fame people dream about: beautiful, talented, adored by millions. But behind that perfect image, her life was slowly falling apart. Her marriage to Oleg Cassini, once full of excitement and style, began to crack under pressure. Oleg was charming and ambitious, but he also lived in a fast world of parties, fashion, and attention. Jean, on the other hand, was struggling to keep her emotions under control while dealing with the pain of her daughter Daria's condition. They both loved each other deeply, but fame can be a heavy weight in a marriage. The 1940s were the golden age of Hollywood, glamorous on the outside but harsh behind the scenes. There was no such thing as privacy. Every move Jean made was watched by the press. Even her sadness had to be hidden behind perfect smiles. If she cried alone in dressing rooms or behind closed doors at home. Oleg tried to support her, but his world kept pulling him in different directions. Their marriage became a tug of war between two careers, two egos, and two very different kinds of pain. Jean's fame was growing faster than either of them had expected. Sometimes that success only made her feel more trapped. In 1948, their second daughter, Christina Tina Cassini, was born. Unlike Daria, Tina was healthy and energetic. Jean poured all her love into her new baby, trying to find healing through motherhood. But even as she smiled for family photos, the cracks in her spirit grew wider. The guilt she felt over Daria's illness haunted her every day. She once said that she would hear her daughter's name in her sleep and wake up crying. By the early 1950s, Jean's mental health began to break down. She became tired, withdrawn, and sometimes couldn't finish her movie scenes. Hollywood didn't know how to handle emotional suffering. Studios just told her to pull herself together. There was little understanding and no compassion for mental illness back then. Jean was brave enough to seek help. She entered treatment centers and underwent therapy, including early forms of electroshock therapy, a common but often harsh treatment for depression in those days. She wrote later that some treatments helped, while others left her feeling numb. But even when she felt broken, she never gave up. She wanted to get better, for her children and for herself. Meanwhile, her film career began to slow down. Producers worried she was too fragile for big roles. In a business that moved fast and loved youth, time away from the camera could end a career. Jean quietly stepped back from the spotlight to focus on healing. Her courage during this time inspired many later in life. She didn't hide from what she went through. Instead, she eventually spoke about it publicly. Long before it was common for stars to discuss mental health, that honesty became one of her strongest legacies. In 1952, after more than a decade together, Jean and Oleg Cassini divorced. Their love story had been passionate, creative, and full of dreams, but it couldn't survive the pressures they both faced. Still, they remained connected by the bond of their two daughters, even after the divorce. Oleg often said that Jean was the most beautiful woman he had ever known. For Jean, the years after the divorce were quiet but uncertain. She moved away from Hollywood for a time, searching for peace. She traveled, read books, painted, and tried to live a normal life, but the shadow of her fame always followed her. People still recognized her everywhere, at restaurants, in small towns, even on quiet beaches. The camera might have stopped rolling, but the public's fascination never ended. In 1960, Jean found happiness again when she married Howard Lee, a wealthy Texas oil man who had once been married to the actress Hedy Lamarr. Howard was calm, kind, and steady, the opposite of the Hollywood lifestyle. He gave Jean something she hadn't felt in years: safety. Their life together was peaceful. They split their time between Texas and Delray Beach, Florida, gone were the bright lights and red carpets. In their place were morning walks, dinners at home, and quiet evenings by the ocean. Jean finally had a chance to breathe. Her second marriage was built on companionship and mutual respect. Howard wasn't dazzled by her fame. He cared for her as a person, not as a star. That grounded love helped her recover emotionally and spiritually. Still, she occasionally returned to acting. In the early 1960s, she appeared in a few films and television roles, not for money or fame, but for the joy of performing. She wanted to prove to herself that she could still do it, that her love for storytelling hadn't faded. Her later performances had a new kind of depth, softer, wiser, more human. In 1979, Jean released her autobiography, Self-Portrait. In it, she told her story with honesty and courage, her successes, her heartbreaks, her mental health battles, and her regrets. She didn't hold back or try to make herself look perfect. Instead, she showed that even stars can break and that healing is possible. Readers were deeply moved. Her book became a source of comfort for people facing their own struggles. But there was another side to Jean's story that the world found hard to ignore. She had seen the dark side of Hollywood, up close: the jealousy, the manipulation, and the cruelty that often hid behind polished smiles. When she finally decided to speak about it, her words shocked everyone. Jean said she had met some of the most charming, powerful, and beloved stars of the golden age, and that some of them weren't just unkind. They were downright evil. She used that word carefully. She didn't mean movie villains or dramatic characters. She meant real people. Behind the scenes, people who destroyed others for pleasure, who thrived on cruelty, and who hid their true nature behind beauty and fame. She once said in an interview, "Evil doesn't wear horns. Sometimes it wears makeup and smiles for the camera." Those words sent a chill through everyone who heard them, because if Jean Tierney, one of the most elegant, respected women in Hollywood, called someone evil, people believed she meant it. Jean Tierney first spoke about the stars she believed were truly evil. She had seen the glamorous side of Hollywood, but also its dark side. Not everyone behind the camera or on the red carpet was kind. Some used charm to hide cruelty, and Tierney wasn't afraid to call it out. Joan Crawford was the first she mentioned. On the surface, Joan looked strong, confident, and polished, but Tierney said that behind that smile, Crawford could be vicious. She pretended to be friendly, yet she would sabotage anyone when they weren't looking. A whispered comment from her could ruin a career. Tierney remembered how cold and competitive Joan could be. Errol Flynn was another. Everyone loved him for his daring roles and swashbuckling charm, but Tierney saw a darker side. He enjoyed humiliating others, and sometimes treated people as if they were nothing. She said his charisma hid a ruthless nature. Tallulah Bankhead was intoxicating and exciting to be around, but she could also be poisonous. Tierney said her words were sharper than any sword. She often mocked colleagues and thrived on cruelty. What many saw as humor, Tierney saw as venom. Kirk Douglas was younger than the others, but his intensity frightened her. He was ambitious, driven, and could be harsh to women on set. Tierney said he seemed to devour people instead of acting. His behavior left lasting scars on those who worked with him. Bette Davis was celebrated for her brilliance on screen, but off camera. She used cruelty like a weapon. She intimidated people and pounced on weakness. Tierney admired her talent, but she couldn't ignore Davis's ruthless side. Humphrey Bogart was famous as the tough guy everyone loved. Tierney said he liked to act like a loner, a rebel, but in private, he could be cruel. He enjoyed making others feel small and used cynicism as armor. Marlene Dietrich was mysterious and glamorous. Tierney said she was cold and calculating. Every gesture and word reminded people that she was above them. There was no kindness, only contempt in her eyes. Clark Gable was adored by millions, but Tierney said he could be callous. He humiliated people who couldn't defend themselves. It wasn't charm, it was cruelty disguised as indifference. Finally, Orson Welles. He was brilliant, yes, but dangerous. He enjoyed controlling everyone around him, not just the camera. He had a way of twisting people and making them doubt themselves. Tierney, that was true evil. Together, these 9 stars painted a grim picture of Hollywood behind the glitz. Tierney said evil wasn't the villain on the screen. It was the smile hiding a dagger, the handshake that could ruin your life. She had met such people, worked with them, and never forgot. By speaking out, she revealed the cruelty that pulsed beneath Hollywood's polished surface. Despite all her struggles, Gene Tierney's legacy as an actress remains extraordinary. Her performances in films like Laura, Leave Her to Heaven, and The Ghost and Mrs. Muir are still celebrated for their emotional depth. Tierney's life story was full of beauty, talent, and tragedy, showing that even those who seem to have it all can face deep personal pain. In her later years, Tierney wrote an autobiography called Self-Portrait. She spoke honestly about her career, her struggles with mental illness, and the lessons she learned along the way. Through her words, she inspired many to be open about mental health. She showed that fame and success do not protect anyone from life's challenges. Before she passed away in 1991, Tierney was admired not just as a great actress, but as a brave woman. She faced her battles with courage and honesty. She remains an icon of Hollywood's golden age, a symbol of grace, strength, and resilience. But Gene Tierney also revealed shocking truths about 9 famous stars of that time. These were stars admired by millions, but who hid dark sides behind their charming faces. According to Tierney, not every star from Hollywood's golden age was as perfect as they seemed on screen. She described these people as cruel, manipulative, and sometimes truly evil. They were not villains in movies, they were people who could destroy careers and hurt others for pleasure. Tierney said she saw this cruelty firsthand and it shocked her. Joan Crawford, Errol Flynn, Tallulah Bankhead, Kirk Douglas, Bette Davis, Humphrey Bogart, Marlene Dietrich, Clark Gable, and Orson Welles. These were the 9 stars she remembered as having hearts full of malice. She explained how they used charm, fame, and power to manipulate others. Their public images were polished and admired, but behind the scenes, they were dangerous. Tierney said evil is not always obvious. It can be a smile, hiding a dagger, or a hand signing a contract knowing it will hurt someone. She met such people and never forgot their cruelty. By speaking of these 9 figures, she revealed the undercurrent of malice beneath Hollywood's polished surface. Gene Tierney's life was full of beauty, triumphs, heartbreak, and enduring stardom. She passed away on November 6, 1991. In Houston, Texas. She had been a lifelong smoker, and years of tobacco use caused emphysema, which claimed her life. She died just 13 days before her 71st birthday, a bittersweet moment marking the end of an era. After her death, Gene Tierney was laid to rest at Houston's historic Glenwood Cemetery. It is a peaceful place with lush grounds and ornate monuments. Many notable figures from Texas history are buried there as well. For fans, Glenwood became a place to pay respects to a luminous actress. Visitors often remark on the quiet dignity that surrounds her grave. It is a fitting tribute to a woman whose life was filled with both dazzling highs and deep personal struggles. Gene Tierney captivated audiences with her elegance, striking beauty, and haunting performances in films like Laura and Leave Her to Heaven. Her legacy continues to inspire, reminding us that even behind the brightest stars, shadows often linger.